From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Rhode Island has 39 cities and towns, and each with their own patchwork of municipal services. Last week, Governor Gina Raimondo signed an executive order empowering Lieutenant Governor Daniel Mckee, a former Cumberland mayor, to develop a plan to consolidate and regionalize municipal services. There's been big talk of regionalization over the years with little to show for it, so how will this be any different? And how is Mckee settling into the state's number 2 job? Our guests this week on Newsmakers, Lieutenant Governor Dan Mckee and Lincoln Town Administrator Joe Almond.
Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel is WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Lieutenant Governor, Administrator, thank you very much for joining us on the program. It's good to have you both.
Good morning.
Yep, good morning.
So, Governor, I'm going to start with you. We're going to talk about regionalization here. If you could snap your fingers, right, and instantly make any consolidation or regionalization happen among the towns, what would it look like?
Well, the first thing is it needs to be something that the communities want, and that the communities understand, because they're on the ground. They understand what will work and what won't work. So I think the first thing that's going to be discussed is going to be this regional public safety dispatching, because there has been buy-in with the coalition that when I was a mayor that I worked with Town Administrator Almond on, and that seems to be the first lead-in. That's probably the first big project.
So what does that mean to people watching at home, a regional public safety dispatch? How many towns? What does it look like?
It's many as Cape Cod's regional dispatching that has almost 13 communities. Started with 7. I think they got about 13 communities in it right now. It's the step into doing regionalization and consolidation work in the public safety area. And it's one that has got models throughout the country, and in Massachusetts there's at least 2 that we know of. So we'll make sure that we, as our office, through that executive order in terms of regionalization that the governor signed last week, we'll make sure that our office, the Lieutenant Governor's office, provides the resources to the municipal leaders that they need to make that happen.
Joe, in this context, you're the head of a major municipality in Rhode Island. What's important to you? What do you want to see in a regionalization effort?
Well, I want to see the ability to regionalize, and I'll use the word share or combined services, because regionalization can have a misconception. You're not looking at dissolving communities and creating a new community. You saw the effect of that once already in an election
ago. Right?
I mean, the cities and towns are built. They have their identities, and they have, a lot of positives. But services can certainly be done on a regional basis. And that's going to be different for every city and town. The needs are different. Some might do a service very efficiently locally, and the people in that city or community might like that local control because it's more efficient. So it's scope, scale. Some services are just better done on a slightly larger scale than most of our cities and towns are small. So some services, a lot of public safety, a lot of dispatch, and then smaller things like animal control stuff. Those things are really more inclined to be done.
Are these big ticket items, Governor? Are we talking about big savings?
Well, I think that's where you don't want to have a misconception when you're saying what are the people's expectations. Is a $10 million going to fall out of the sky overnight? No. But collectively, can you begin to save money and provide a good service? Absolutely. And can the service be improved in the local? And so any money saved on property taxes is a savings, whether it's small, big. I think the expectation has to be rational, that every city and town isn't going to want to share the same services because they might not have a need to. But some it'll absolutely, like dispatch is really a no-brainer.
Tim said it in the opening, Lieutenant Governor, that people feel like everyone always says, let's regionalize, let's consolidate. It doesn't happen, and it's just talked about. And I can imagine some people hear this, oh, she just signed a piece of paper saying we should regionalize. Why does it matter? So make this concrete for people. Why does it matter that Governor Raimondo signed this piece of paper and told you to do this work?
Well, first, Tim, but first, let's put it this way, that we've been meeting for years. Joe and I and municipal leaders have been meeting for years. So the new thing to the table right now is the fact that we're not recreating the wheel. There's already been huge savings that we've done, that we've enjoyed through group purchasing on health insurance and working together on multiple other areas where we're advocating against unfunded mandates, and we're saving communities money on that. So I promised that we would have a place where people could hang their hat, Ted, right? So, and the municipal leaders will have that. And that's something that is totally different than in the past. There's going to be a place where the municipal leaders come in. We'll have either a flag for every municipal community in our office. People will know, and then we'll try to mirror some of the great projects that are going on in Massachusetts, where there's some community innovation funds that are available, that are in the budget, that are going to allow to provide the resources to the communities. If they come up with an idea, which we're talking about right now, about expanding the revaluation cycle. We think that based on the early numbers.
Is there a timeline though for the work here? Like, is it the governor has said she wants in 6 months to have some big ideas on the table, or could this just go on forever, and maybe sometimes things pop up or?
Well, if I can jump in, I think what people have to understand is what we're focused on right now is the obstacles to make these things happen. In other words, it's easy to have a concept or an idea, but there's a lot of statutory schemes and obstacles, home rule charters, state statutes regarding contracts, evergreen contracts, who's going to govern the service. There still has to be, right now we have local governments and state governments. There's nothing in between. So you're either going to turn the service over to the state government, or you have to have some collective pool of local governments and then some way to govern those people that are going to provide that service. So it's not like, just join with somebody. You've got two different collective bargaining contracts that don't expire. So what we're hoping to do is figure out a way, as other states have done, is to remove the barriers so that those that want to can, and those that can show a need, and then have somebody do an analysis of where you can save money and what things will actually save money and what things should be better done. It could be only one group of communities in the state that have similar needs, similar calls for service, similar geographics and everything else that it fits perfectly in, and then somewhere else it doesn't. But right now we're just facing obstacles and obstacles.
And then the office we're going to be able to provide some resources out of the Lieutenant Governor's office to help what Joe just explained. If there's a need for a legislation that allows for when more than one community want to have some sort of a crossover services, and it requires a new governance model, like we did in the fire districts in our town of Cumberland, we created a new new governance model that allowed 4 independent districts to come into one. And then which I want just to finish the thought for the viewers, because you asked what does that mean in terms of the other pieces of that executive order, which talks about mandates, it talks about other levels of efficiencies. If you just lengthen the revaluation cycle that's in the communities, and you either double it or close to double it, the municipality property taxes, right, and go from 3-year cycles to a 5 or a 6-year cycle that's on the same schedule. There's as much as $20 million of taxpayer savings that could be derived from that, over $1 million a year, just in that space, and almost $10 million of state money that can be solved. So when you get in, those are real dollars. Those are actually. So we're going to be working on that piece. We're going to be working on strategizing how a governance model could be set up that would enable communities that want to actually get involved with these type of concepts to be able to do it. And then our office, we're going to try to discover ways that we can provide the resources to help make that happen.
Joe, the Lieutenant Governor just brought up fire districts, and former gubernatorial candidate Ken Block wrote an editorial in the Journal putting the spotlight on Lincoln. He wrote, quote, "Lincoln is remarkable in that it has 6 different fire departments within its 19 square miles. Lincoln has 6 fire chiefs, 6 chiefs' vehicles, and 7 firehouses. He calls it wasteful and extreme." Is he right or wrong?
It's heading in that direction, so I would say he's half right.
Okay.
No, I think he's half right. If you wait and do nothing, he'll be absolutely right in 10 years. Is there redundancy and waste? Absolutely. You have to look at the total cost of something. So fire districts are an evolution of volunteers, and so there was redundancy in equipment and chiefs and things like that.
Should there just be a Lincoln Fire Department? One fire chief running the whole show?
There should probably be a Northern Rhode Island Fire Department in reality, to be honest with you. But those things will all come in time, and I believe they will. But Lincoln is evolving, and it needs to. We are taking steps now locally through our town council and hopefully with the General Assembly. We've already sent the message out clear that we intend to, by whatever means is available to us legally, consolidate our fire department.
Did Cumberland realize huge savings when they did some consolidation with their fire departments?
Well, it just became official in the election in November. So we've been working, we phased it in over a year, and now they're going to operate for 6 months under the 4 budgets, and then they'll bring it into one budget in July. And if they do a good job, Tim, if they do a good job, there's 10-15% savings that could be realized there, which is not a small amount of money.
So this executive order signed by the governor charges you with drafting legislation that would create incentives for towns to regionalize. What kind of incentives are we talking about?
Well, I think that it's providing resources from the state that would help allow. So we met with the municipal leaders
So more
this
state
week.
aid.
Not necessarily state aid, but as much as so what they've done in Massachusetts is they created this community innovation fund. So when more than one community decide that they would like to go do something, they could apply for that fund, and it could be seed money to help create the charter or the governance model or the research that could show that it's a good idea to do. So, or for instance, we've been trying to. I say we because I'm putting my mayor's hat on again. We've been trying. The mayor's been trying for a long time to do this regional dispatching. Yet when we got to the state, there was no one really to really finish the deal. So if you could identify potential properties that are unused that could be used to help facilitate, and then the state, as we do in our communities, we provide our for the right project, we'll provide buildings for the right project. So the state could step in and provide buildings that could help facilitate some of these things, and that saves money.
Joe, what are some of, you both have talked about unfunded state mandates that's in the executive order. What are some of the biggest, when you think of things the state requires you to do in Lincoln that add a lot to the budget, that really do cost money?
Well, they all cost money, and there's no one thing that costs a lot. So that or at least not in Lincoln. There's literally hundreds of them. And for instance, every city and town will have a tree warden. Every city and town will have an EMA manager. Every city and town will have bus monitors. Every city and town will have. So you have to take them and add them up. And I certainly didn't come here today with that kind of number, but it's thousands of dollars, and in the larger the place, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the question is whether or not you need to do it. If you need to do something, you have to spend the money. We'll talk about that later with snow, but it's when you don't feel you need to do something, or when somebody's imposing something on you that you statistically or data doesn't show you need, that's when it's harmful, and it is a waste of money. And so I don't get overly concerned with mandates because I can't change them. And once you institutionalize something, say bus monitors, even if you take away the mandate, once it's institutionalized, you're going to find very little local will to remove it, because the backlash is going to be against the local people, not against the people who mandated it in the first place. And so that's really the catch-all, is you're mandated to do it, and then they say, well, we'll let you take it away now. Well,
and it's also what you prevent too. So if for instance, there's pieces of legislation right now that are talking about changing the way that the emergency, like the paramedics are tested. And that shift alone is going to cost communities thousands and thousands of dollars. So let's not pass that legislation. Why fix something that's not broken? So there's there's legislation right now to maybe reverse what the court decision that in North Kingstown that talked about going on 24-hour shifts, and that it's a management right to do that, such that. So it's not only rolling back mandates, as Joe said, maybe it's difficult to roll back some of them because they get institutionalized, but it's preventing future mandates to come down the way that would create a large cost to the municipality.
We have to take a break on the program, and what I like is Joe already teased to the second half. We will be talking about beleaguered snow budgets. Our guests this week are Lieutenant Governor Dan Mckee and Lincoln Town Administrator Joe Almond. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, my colleague from WPRI.com, Ted Nesi. Our guests this week, Lieutenant Governor Dan Mckee and Lincoln Town Administrator Joe Almond. Before we move on to snow budgets, as promised, I have a question for you, Governor. How much, if at all, how much pushback do you expect from organized labor with the regionalization effort?
Well, I don't think that, I think it's in the best interest of everyone. I think the governor answered that question very well, and the other day is that it's in everybody's best interest to build a better Rhode Island. I'm back on the campaign trail by saying that, but it's true. The way I look at it is this, and if you give me 30 seconds, I can.
30 seconds is yours.
I think that you need to make some changes on the ground, a couple degrees. So if you're a couple degrees off shooting for the moon, you're going to be thousands and thousands of millions of miles off. So you need to make these changes on the ground, and those couple degrees will get you on target. There's plenty of will to halfway there to make a 100,000 mile adjustment, but that doesn't make it happen, and that's what the serious problem that we're facing in the state of Rhode Island. I think the governor showed a great deal of leadership by putting this executive order, and we need to make those adjustments on the ground. And really, it doesn't matter, quite frankly, if it's in the best interest of the people who live in the state of Rhode Island who objects.
All right, Joe, so how's that snow removal budget treating you?
The snow removal budget's gone.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's not, you have to expect it.
I'll put you on the spot. How much? Can you tell us how much you've spent?
Our budget is $275,000. Right now we're probably in the 290s. We still haven't factored in the
I
storm
gotta
last
tell you, that's
weekend.
a lot less than I thought you would
Our-
spend
As
by
you
now.
get into the suburbs, your problems are, I shouldn't say your problems, your conditions are easier. So you have less obstacles in the way. And so we have over 100 miles of local roads, but we have a lot less obstacles. Most of people are automatically parked off road. There isn't a lot of congestion on the roads and things like that. So
you're already over your budget. Who knows what else Mother Nature's going to send down the bowling alley in the next couple of months. How do you fill that financial gap?
with surplus. We maintain a surplus, and we expect that we tend to do our snowfall on 5-year increments, and you have maybe 3 or 4 good years and
And
2 bad
luckily,
years.
salt as a commodity hasn't been all that expensive, right?
No, we factor the salt in, and these storms actually aren't using as much salt as a normal winter.
Because it's so
You'd
cold?
be surprised, yeah, because it's been so cold. It's those small storms where it rains, it melts, it comes back, that's when your salt goes out the window. We're not doing a lot of salt and sanding. We're doing it after our cleanup, and that's it. We're not having to do it all in between.
Lieutenant Governor, how happy are you that you stopped being a mayor right before these storms started?
As Joe's telling that story, we had those snowstorms where we went through all the salt last year,
Yeah.
and we were way over budget. But like as Joe said, but yes, it's a total different responsibility. And I do kid with my wife, Susan, as the snow's going down and Joe's working really hard out there. That I'm like a man of leisure during these snowstorms at the moment.
Well, you can complain. These roads in Cumberland are just not
I'll have
allowed
to call Mayor Murray on that.
Yeah, it's something you just have to commit to.
Yeah.
You can't budget scientifically for it, because if you do, you're going to be over budgeting. You're going to be overtaxing for several years just to get ready for something.
Are you going to look
that's
to
gonna
FEMA
come.
for help?
Yes, and that's what I was going to say, is if we get the help from FEMA for the initial blizzard, that'll pretty much balance us out again.
Okay.
You were, Lieutenant Governor, you were at Governor Raimondo's press conference. I saw you there earlier this week, where she laid out a pretty bleak picture of Rhode Island's economic health and started to hint at what she might suggest to turn that around. But I'm just curious, sitting there and listening, we may not have all been surprised by those statistics, but what did you take away from her presentation?
I think she's right on target with her. She's really focused on this job issue, jobs, and then she's willing to. We just came from a meeting where the staff was there. She's willing to really interact with our office in a way that I think is real strong. So I think her message is right on target. It goes back to what I said earlier. We need to reset from the ground, and I think that she has the will to do that. And I think that that's what you heard in her discussions. Look. If it's raining outside, don't tell me that the sun's out, right? But if the sun's out, let's celebrate those victories and acknowledge that. And I think that's what you're going to see. I think that you showed a bleak picture, and it is raining in a lot of ways on our economy in the state of Rhode Island with the high unemployment issues and first in and last out of these recessions, and also having a very low profile in terms of business friendliness. I fully expect that can turn around, and I think that Gina is showing that leadership, and I thought that was a very good presentation the other day. And she did the same thing in front of the chamber. She laying out a great argument that says that we need to do certain things, and we have to have the will to do it. And time will tell, but check with me in about 2 years. We'll see how we did.
Joe, shifting gears a little bit, Twin River wants to build a hotel on its property, 150 to 250 rooms. What do you think? You support it?
Do I? Personally, I support it, yes. I think it's up to our town council, who I have great respect for, and I think they'll give it a fair vetting. And so far, I think what they've proposed is not really anything to be overly concerned about.
You must get phone calls, or when you're out shopping, people to say, hey, and stop you and give you their opinion. What are you hearing from the people of Lincoln about it?
If I was to give you the informal poll, I don't think the people of Lincoln would mind it at all. But you have to respect that there's some people who will. And, you know, it's just one of those things. There'll be a group of people who will be adamantly opposed to it, and there'll be, but I feel the majority of people, as long as what they're presenting is what's put forward, and it appears to be, it appears to be not intrusive whatsoever.
The group of people that are opposed to it, are those mainly the folks that live around there? Are they worried about congestion, or is it just the overall philosophy of gambling an issue with that?
Yes, I would describe that most of the opposition I hear is just a generic opposition to gambling. And so anything connected with that brings opposition. And then there are some neighbors who have legitimate concerns, and their concerns should always be addressed, and they have been. But there are, you know, if I lived next door, I'd certainly be concerned, and unless I knew exactly what was going to happen, that concern would remain.
What's the timeline on this hotel project?
I honestly don't know, because right now you're dealing with the General Assembly, and obviously nothing can happen unless the General Assembly lifts the prohibition. And from there, it's just a local zoning matter, planning and zoning.
I want to stick with you, Joe, for a minute, because you are a rare Republican who can still win elections in Rhode Island. You got 80% of the vote in your re-election bid last fall. As one of the few elected Republicans left in Rhode Island at the moment, what do you think the GOP needs to do in Rhode Island to rebuild after a really tough election last fall?
I don't want to speak for the GOP on a statewide. I think candidates just have to deal with the issues. Like I said, when we get together with the group of mayors and stuff, and I am definitely in the minority. I think I come in with Mayor Avedisian and Mayor Fung and a couple of other people, but we recognize that we have to work together. And some of the times in the state politics, I think it gets too galvanized into down party lines, and it's just not a winning ingredient. There is, once the elections are over, you just have to go to work and work on good policy.
I have 30 seconds left, so I'm going to end it with you, Governor. What's been the biggest surprise for you taking office? Number 2, Mayor of Cumberland, now you're Lieutenant Governor of State House. Anything surprise you so far? About 30 seconds left. Not
really. I know that there's a big task in front of us. I've been very. I'll tell you, everybody around the State House has been very, very friendly. Put it that way, and not that that's a surprise. Not that it's a surprise, but from the police officers all the way down through the people who actually are helping us set up our computers and doing a lot of the logistics issues, that painting our office and that type of thing. So. That not a surprise, but I was pleasantly, happy to hear that the people were very.
I have to cut you free. We're going to end the show with a piece from a Street Story segment. My colleague Walt Buteau. It's a story that seems tailor fit for newsmakers. A unique collection that just might be the largest of its kind.
As you're about to see, collecting political stuff for 21 years from Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and many other states really adds up. If you're thinking buttons, you're right.
There's some great early Claiborne Pell, Pastori.
But Andrew Nelson's political haul goes beyond button, whose political past is on the button.
Bags and bags of pens, nail files, combs, napkins, rulers. And now it's just gone way beyond what I ever imagined. What do we got in here? A box of ribbons, balloons, thimbles, bottle caps, Pinko markers, magnets. Some of these are really old, going back.
His collection starts way back when Andrew was 12 and his father was in the middle of a 30-year political career that brought him from New Bedford City Council president to state representative to then Bristol County Sheriff. That's why Andrew grew up in an almost 2-century-old house connected to the county jail.
I had a basketball court in the backyard surrounded by the jail cells, so my friends would come over and the inmates would be yelling at us and swearing at us. It was a creepy place, yeah.
Speaking of jail, Rhode Islanders have every reason to complain about corrupt politicians. But then there's James Michael Curley, a Boston mayor, Massachusetts governor, a congressman, and a political legend.
Here's him with Franklin Roosevelt. This is one of his first ones from 1904 when he was in jail. He was elected twice from jail. One of his alderman campaigns in like 1904, he won actually from jail. So here's some Buddy Cianci stuff.
How much larger his collection will get
Rare window decal from JFK, 1958.
probably depends on his Speaker of the House, his wife, who's already leery of a collection that is creeping into the attic.
We're currently in a bedroom that should be a bedroom, so she's not the most thrilled. She tolerates it.
So maybe his collection is complete, but he admits he might not be able to stop. Walt Buteau, Eyewitness News.
That's Street Stories with Walt Buteau and videographer John Villella. My thanks to our guests this week on Newsmakers, Lieutenant Governor Dan Mckee and Lincoln Town Administrator Joe Almond. If you missed any of it, you can catch it online, WPRI.com. It is under the on-air section where you can also catch more of Street Stories. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.